Hey everyone, in this episode we have Noah Kingery. Noah Kingery is somebody that I've gotten to know over the past few months. He has a heck of a story. This man lost a ton of weight, battled with opiate addiction and alcoholism, made a ton of money, lost a ton of money. He's got a heck of a story, and that is what is in this episode of Real Recovery Talk. Enjoy the show. Later. Here we are, Real Recovery Talk. I am your host, Tom Conrad. In today's episode, I told you all last week that we were going to have a special guest on, and today is the day. Today we have Noah Kingery. Noah is somebody that I have gotten to know over the past couple of months now, and this guy right here has a heck of a story. I mean, it ranges from extreme weight loss to recovering from addiction with opiates and alcohol, made tons of money, lost tons of money, attempted suicide, all of the above. This man has a heck of a story, and he is kind enough to come here to share it with all of us and all of you. So that is what we are going to be discussing today. Just for a couple groundskeeping, you can go to realrecoverytalk.com. At the bottom of there, you're going to find the live chat button. Click that and you can send a direct message to either myself or Ben if you have any questions or comments about addiction for yourself or for a loved one, or alcoholism, or with food, drugs, sex. It doesn't matter. If it pertains to addiction, fair game. You can ask, and there is no stupid questions. I promise you that. All right, so let's get into it. Noah, I want to just go right into the meat and potatoes. You obviously are here. You have a lot to share. Take us back to the beginning of where this all started for you.
Sure. Well, I'm happy to be here.
Yeah.
And we've spent a couple great days just, getting to learn and understand one another even better. And yeah, the power of social media is, it's amazing. You can create amazing impact with it, and you can also create some amazing relationships. And so, where does this start for me? For me, we're looking at, go back to 2007. Now, 2007, I'm playing professional youth soccer in Brazil. I'm on the top of my game, chasing dreams. And I had a long distance relationship, high school sweetheart, if you want to call it that I walked away from soccer and walked away from dreams overnight, pretty much overnight. Walked away from the soccer, lost scholarships, and that spiraled me into wanting to escape from the choices that I made. And what I say is that a lot of the times, when we have made really, really harsh or rash decisions that impact many, many more years of our lives, we hold on to that guilt and shame so much. And a lot of the times we want to escape. And for me, it started in 2000, and I'll fast forward to 2009, where I had my first drink and I had my first snort of cocaine, and that was it. It took one try and one time to escape temporarily, to never, ever, ever think about what really I had done and what I was doing. And so I, went on. For me, addiction gripped my life. And anyone out there who, is listening to this, it has probably either been affected by addiction or maybe going through addiction right now. And I say that it takes anything good, any good part of your character, anything good in your life, and it will destroy it. You have that experience.
Yeah,
you have
absolutely.
your story. And you work with so many individuals and addicts that have those stories. And so I know that my story is not, it's one of a million, but one of a million that has turned that for good, that has turned that around into 5.5 years of sobriety today. And I will never, ever, ever go back to where I once was. Never. And so, yeah.
So I want to go back a second to the professional soccer. Talk a little bit too about like where you grew up, what the family dynamic was like maybe growing up, because obviously I have a little bit of knowledge as to that, and I want you to kind of go into that a little bit because I think it'll tie in. It has an interesting way of tying into your story.
Sure, sure. I was born and raised in Bangalore, India. My parents, for 30 years, have served those with disabilities, and in just in an effort to watch people really rise up out of their circumstances and their conditions. And so I was born and raised there with my sisters. I have two sisters, and the family dynamic and the family bond is like this. And it's been like this. But no family bond and no relationships stay like this when it comes to addiction, much of the time. And, for my family, one thing throughout this whole entire process that has gotten me here today is they never once gave up on me. Never once. But I pushed them away so far that they had to pray from a distance. They said, and they wanted me healthy. They wanted me sober. They wanted me to live optimally. But they didn't quite understand how to help me because they had never struggled with addiction, And so, you imagine walking away from soccer, walking away from school. I never told my parents any of that. It was only a year later that they found out that had happened. So the relationships were shattered, absolutely shattered. And so, I will fast forward to that. A year later that I started to spiral into the addiction, I gained 210 pounds in 1 year. So what happens there, you go from 143 pounds to 356, and you want to escape even more. So what happened? The addiction, the drugs, the alcohol, it continued to get deeper and deeper and deeper.
I want you to pause there just for a second, and because when people listen to this podcast, they think that it is generally focused around drugs and alcohol, which primarily it is because, a lot of people, that is what they suffer with. A lot of people have a hard time grasping the idea that food can really be an addiction. So I want you to say that again, because in case the audience missed it, how much weight did you gain in how quick of a period of time?
Sure. I gained 210 pounds in a year, like literally 11 months later.
210 pounds in 11 months. I'm no mathematician, but I'm guessing that is 15 pounds a month?
Sure.
Roughly?
Sure. A lot of weight.
More than that.
A lot of weight. But here's the thing, I work as a nutritionist today, following my purpose, paying it forward to those as I have lost 190 pounds and have been maintaining it. But what I say is that no matter whether it's the food, no matter whether it's the drugs, no matter whether it's the alcohol, those temporary destructive escapes are there. And I work to break those and shatter those with individuals because I believe that freedom is on the other side of that. The moment that you start to face life head on, and I mean absolutely face every single thing no matter what the circumstance, it is incredible what you learn about yourself. It's incredible, and it adds a lot of strength, So yeah, I as far as the weight gain was concerned, you talk about going from, again, 143 soccer player athlete, star athlete, mind you, to 356 pounds with very, very little hope. Very little hope. And so for me at that time, 2009, I transitioned, really about 6 months later, I transitioned into the fashion industry. Probably the scariest place you could be at 356 pounds because it was all image. It was all how you look, right? And so what I did is I, did really, really high-end t-shirts, and I wanted to, again, create something. I was very creative. And so I created a business out of that. And I worked, through the process of fashion, I worked with everybody from Justin Bieber to Katy Perry to Kanye West to you name it. That was the life. And that only spiraled and added to more addiction. I was the richest I'd ever been the wealthiest and the most successful I had ever been, but I couldn't get a grip on my addiction, man. And so what I say is I was just a functioning addict in all aspects. And for me, it was like a revolving door of addiction. You talk about the sex, you talk about the pornography, you talk about the drugs, you talk about the alcohol, you talk about the food. It was like a lazy Susie of addictions, right?
Again, and I'm always referencing people listening because they could be sitting there thinking, well, this guy came from a household of missionaries, was doing God's work, right? Had all this, was a professional soccer player, had all this stuff going for him, broke into the fashion industry, making tons and tons and tons of money. Mm-hmm. But something obviously wasn't clicking. Something was missing. Mm-hmm. And you were looking, at least from what I can understand, looking for external validation, external things to cure an internal issue. Mm-hmm. So at what point was it that you really identified that none of this stuff is going to fix me until I figure out internally what's going on?
Man, I mean, I tried and tried and tried so many times to get sober. And when I say tried so many times, on my own, with family support, with the right people that were accountable, keeping me accountable. But in 2012, I was at the height of my career, and I was on the 31st floor, downtown Los Angeles, penthouse. I had everything from the outside, but I was extremely empty on the inside. And I never really understood what it was to be for these celebrities that have it all to be suicidal, right? Most people that look at that, they're like, man, but you have it all. And people were looking at me saying the exact same thing. He has everything to be, like, why would he be depressed? Or why would he, want to escape? And I don't know the answer to why that was, but I was incredibly empty. And so I tried to take my life. It was 2012. One of my best friends interjected and saved my life. I woke up the next morning with my life spared. And I have to say this, but there is no other way to say it but the grace of God in my life over all the selfish decisions and all the selfishness that I was creating, that he stepped in and allowed me to wake up that next day. 100 painkillers in my system, huge handle of vodka all polished off, the house completely wrecked. Again, that was my life, right? But the thing is, nobody ever could see that part of my life because that was always me doing it by myself in solitude, in the dark, or in depression. I never, ever, ever, for the most part, would socialize and do this kind of stuff. It was always by myself, and that was 2012. The sad part is, most people hear this story and they say, surely that was a wake-up call. 7 days later, I was back to addiction. 7 days later. I was still 356, and I was an addict, full-blown addict. And I had no idea how to truly submit to my convictions on my addiction. Absolutely no idea, because I felt like I could be successful and do anything and everything, but I could not get a hold of my weight, and I could not get a hold of my addiction. But I could do everything else, and that was very, very hard. So that constant escape, Anybody out there that is listening to this, that is in the spiral of addiction, man, that guilt and shame is like chains around your ankles. And if you can start to rid that guilt and shame or those chains with even the accountability and support system in your life, I truly believe that's one way and a great stepping stone to start to step forward and stop letting 1 hour of poor choice turn into the next 24 hours or the next week.
Wow. There's a ton there, obviously. I can say that I can feel it, as we're sitting here having a conversation, that this is obviously something that is super important to you. And you've told this story time and time again, because obviously with your transformation and everything, and like it's such an inspiring story, that it's really it's amazing to see where you were versus where you are now in that transformation. So while you were working in the fashion industry and making all that money and stuff, was there any, like, was anybody picking up on this or not really? Because I mean, the fashion industry is, I mean, I'm not part of it. It's obvious. If anybody see how I dress myself, I'm obviously not part of the fashion. But from what I understand and what I can gather, drugs and alcohol is in the fashion industry, like, running rampant. Is that, I mean, yeah. So did you kind of like fly under the radar for a while? What was that progression like for you?
I mean, for me, like I said, I did everything in solitude by myself in the most part. And however, yes, I mean, those environments are, if you have an addiction, they're going to fuel that addiction. If you have an insecurity, they're going to fuel that insecurity. And for me, I was addicted to that. I was addicted to wanting more success and wanting more connections. And again, I was 24 years old. And I was doing I was doing things at 24 that for most people looking on the outside were like, whoa. And I was held up on a pedestal for the most part. But the people that were in my life that cared for me deeply, they were shattered. They were broken. I mean, I cannot tell you the amount of times, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. I can't tell you the amount of times that I got in the car completely wasted and would pick my mother up to take her to dinner. And when she would go home at night, because she didn't want to set me off, so when she would go home at night, she would be on her knees praying two things. One, Father God, save Noah from what he is doing to himself, or take him early before he kills somebody else or himself. I didn't know these prayers were going on until we would reminisce now, 5.5 years sober. But that type of deep torment, I hold on to that because I believe that if you can build a disdain for that lifestyle, for how you feel the next day after a binge or a bender for that week, if you can start building an incredible disdain against it, it will add incredible fuel to inspire you to not continue to be giving into those destructive choices that have been holding you down for far too long. I am passionate about this, you're right, because I'm watching people every single day that can't get it together. And I was there. When I I'll go to a dinner party or a nightclub, very rarely, but when I do, and I see people that are hanging from the rafters all over the place, I see what I used to be. And I will never go back to that, but the unfortunate part is that drunk driving and those reckless decisions continued and continued and continued. And it took me until 2014. 2014, business partner fled the country, siphoned $7.3 million, everything that I had, investor money, you name it. And I was looking at 20 years for financial crime investigation. Now, mind you, I couldn't go a single day without a drink or without a drug or without some type of a toxic escape. I couldn't. But something in me within those first 3 days of turning myself in for this investigation said, if I don't get sober now, I'm either going to kill myself or I'm going to lose everything for a long time. And that was it. I cannot tell you how it happened, but 3 days later, I didn't crave another drink. I didn't crave another drug. I craved to show my innocence, but I craved to rebuild that integrity that had been just absolutely shattered for years. So I'm in there 2014, and I start working out, and I start utilizing the gym as my sanctuary for release. I start using my quiet times with the Lord as my sanctuary for release. I start finding many different releases that are positive for my life. A year and a half later, I was 190 pounds down. 190 pounds down, but even more importantly, I was a year and a half sober. More importantly, I was completely cleared of financial crime investigation. More importantly, I had one chance, in my opinion, I still believe this today, I've had so many chances in my life to get it right. God has given me those chances through family, through help, all of that. But I'm not going to squander this chance. And I will never go back to where I once was. And my prayer in all of this, as I share my testimony, as I share that side of addiction, I talk a lot about extreme weight loss. And that's a big part of my story. And a lot of people struggle with that. But as I share this, as I share more about my addiction and more about my past, that it gives other people hope that are stuck in that spiral right now. That there is hope. But you got to turn your perspective. And if you can't turn it, you've got to look at the other people that can help you turn that. So I could go on a rant, but
wow. Okay. So, geez Louise, there's so much there. Jail. How long were you in jail?
I wasn't. I was literally bound from home to the grocery store, to the gym, and back home. That was it. So I was not. I literally turned myself in for financial crime.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So you turned yourself, because what I'm trying to figure out here is when the switch was flipped.
Yeah.
I mean, I know you said that like you turned yourself in, and it was from there you really decided like this isn't the life that I want to live. Mm-hmm. I'm just going to say this. A lot of people that we work with, they've said that exact line to themselves. Mm-hmm. And I'll include myself hundreds of times to where I told myself, this is not the life I want to live anymore. Sure. And I found myself doing the same thing over and over again. Mm-hmm. So what do you think it was? And it could be deeper than just, I know I'm putting you on the spot now, but what do you think that was that drove that flipped that switch? I mean, because it's not like, I don't want to live this life anymore. I'm going to go to the grocery store. I'm going to hit the gym. I'm going to lose 190 pounds. Yeah. It doesn't work that way.
Sure. Well, I mean, for that investigation, I couldn't do anything in the fashion industry. I could do nothing for that whole year. So what did that do? It changed my environment real fast. It forced a change in environment. And most people that deal with addiction and the struggles, like yourself, and like we have, is that if you don't change the environment, it's not going to work. You don't have the willpower. You haven't had the willpower, and you're not going to just magically build the willpower by saying, well, I don't need this anymore, and staying in the same environment, staying in the same circles. It doesn't work. So you have got to change that drastically. And for me, I was forced that. The home was taken, man. The cars were taken. My life was like, okay, I have nothing, absolutely nothing but a pile of debt, 20 years that I'm looking at. And this is fight or flight, man. And when I mean fight or flight, I mean fight or flight. And so for me, that was it, man. And again, 3 days later, I really, there's no explanation, but what I will say is that it was the consistency of showing up and pushing through on days that I didn't feel like it. After that, because it was emotional, man. You can imagine. Again, I was 26 at the time. It was like, I didn't know what was on the other side for me, man. But I said, if there's any time that I can change this, I can do it now. And I say this all the time to individuals in their journeys right now, whether it's with weight loss or drug abuse, is that if you can get sober in the harshest of times of your life, you can stay sober anytime. Because the storms of life aren't going to stop. They are going to continue to come. If you can lose the weight in the harshest time of your life, you will be able to maintain the weight when you do lose a loved one, when you do lose your job. And so, so for me, the clicking moment really was me showing up and saying, I'm going to step forward one day at a time. But every single day, I'm going to make intentional decisions for my life with everything I do. You know, a lot of people think it's the big choices that make a big impact. No, those small choices are what add up, right? And so that was 2014, you know, and again, I mean, it took me that whole year, you know, by December I was cleared of financial crime investigation, and I looked at it as my second chance at life. But I also looked at it as, okay, I'm cleared, I could go back into the fashion industry and get right back. I couldn't do it, man. I could not do it because that was the first time in a very, very long time that I was seeing with sober eyes. And you know it. When you're seeing the world with sober eyes, everything changes. Friends change. Perspective changes. And I had to continue that lifestyle change as I was going to move forward, or else it would have been really easy for me to slip back in it. You know, and that led me to 2016. It took me till 2016 to close the doors on the fashion industry. And it was hard. Because I was holding on to that ego of who I worked with and, you know, my accolades and the money and the materialism. Anybody out there right now who is chasing materialism and think it's going to fulfill you, I promise you, you got it twisted. You got it twisted. And I can only say that because I know what it is to start and not have much. You know, my parents, I grew up in a 400 square foot. They were making $1,000 a month for all 5 of us. Seeing people on the streets in India. And then I totally forgot where I'd come from through that addiction and through that time of making all that. And then I lost it all, and I have rebuilt my life today, and I'm grateful for that. But the way that I steward my money, the way that I steward my decisions, the way that I steward the opportunities that I have in my life and the relationships that I have in my life, they really hold me up. And they keep me, I want to stay sober because it is beautiful, beautiful, the things that are happening. And I'm not saying that if you get sober, your whole life is going to be like, oh, great, and you have it all together. No, you have a lot of years probably to rebuild. That's where people, you know, get really down, and it's hard. But yeah, man.
So I remember us talking yesterday briefly, and it kind of boggled my mind a little bit, that not a little bit, a lot of it, that, you know, here we have such a young guy that has managed to break into the fashion industry. And I even told Noah, like, you have an entrepreneurial type about you, which is obvious, you know, like it doesn't seem as if you've really spent much time, like you've always worked for yourself for the most part. And I find that very, you know, that's very aspiring, you know, but we know on a surface level the power that money has over people. And the fact that you had it and lost it, but then remember, I'm sure you remember yesterday telling me the best decision that you have ever made for yourself was to not go back into the fashion industry. Mm-hmm. And knowing what stood there, what you potentially could have gained back by going into the fashion industry, and turning that down and knowing that that's the best decision that you've ever made for yourself is, I mean, that in and of itself is pretty amazing. Because look, reality is, when people get sober, one of the first things that they want to get back is money. They want to get back money.
And all they lost.
Yeah, and it oftentimes is all materialistic things. Pause there.
Perfect. Is this going okay?
Yeah.
I mean, are you feeling, because I'm like getting...
So we spend a lot of time talking about, you know, money isn't everything, and we really try and change people's perspectives. You know, we of course encourage people to go out and get jobs, because when somebody lands in here, chances are they don't know how to manage money. They don't have 2 nickels to rub together to begin with, you know. So we're in the business of getting people not only sober, but we're building life skills back into their, you know, we're giving them life skills. And you have a kind of a different scenario when it comes to that, because you were on your own for so long and did this stuff on your own. But we really try and instill to them, like, and I tell our clients all the time, as time goes on, money doesn't hold the same value as it used to, and the fact is that we couldn't manage money in our addiction, so it doesn't matter how much money we have now until we actually learn how to manage it. It doesn't really matter. I don't want to go off on the whole money thing. That could be a completely separate topic, but I do want to transition to now post 2016. We talked about the past. You were obviously, you qualified yourself very well. I mean, drug addict, alcoholic, food addict, you name it. 2016, sober Noah.
Yeah.
Take it.
Yeah, I mean, 2016, January, I had the decision to make, and that was to walk away from the fashion industry. And I was scared to death. I had started nutrition management, where I work with the nutrition side and the emotional side of weight loss. And so at that time I had 13 clients and was really struggling, for sure, to make ends meet. But I was so satisfied, and I knew in the depths of my soul that I was pursuing purpose. I knew it. That was something I'd never felt before in my entire life.
Pause. What did it feel like with those 13 clients? Because you're making tons of money in fashion. Now you have 13 clients that are, I'm assuming, morbidly obese, if that's the right terminology to use.
Yeah. I mean, and I worked with an addict during that time as well. So yes, I mean, I think with the 13 clients and the business that I had, I knew and I believed that it could be something. But I didn't know, is that going to be a passionate, purposeful hobby? Or can that be a career? Because the truth of the matter is, most individuals, they work their passions on the side. Most individuals work their passions as a hobby. And that's all good. Find your passion. For me, though, everything in me said, I want to do this full time. And more importantly, I would do this for free if I could. I never look at a client as a number. And I had 13 clients. I went and visited my family in India. They were still living there at the time. And that's where I said, Lord, if I am supposed to walk away from the fashion industry, this is December 2016, I said, if I'm supposed to walk away from the fashion industry, show me a clear sign of being able to do it, financially and all of it. The Daily Mail came out with an article. They found me on social media. I had a very small account at the time. They found it. They put it out about my suicide and some of the stuff that I was talking about in this podcast already. And things blew up from there. And it went from, 13 clients to 30 clients overnight. I returned back to Los Angeles a week later, and I closed the doors on the fashion completely. And I haven't looked back since. And it's been a struggle to get where I am right now. Right now I work with 50 clients overseas and 50 clients in the US. And I love, love, love what I do because I truly believe this is my calling. And so it has been a struggle to get here. But I believe if I didn't steward the 13 clients correctly, I wouldn't have been able to steward the 30, and I wouldn't have been able to steward 50, and I would surely haven't been able to be working with 50 that I am right now. And this goes with anything in life about stewardship. You were talking about money just a minute ago. You were talking about us not being able to manage money or take care of things. Listen, start to steward the small things. I don't care what it is. Maybe it's making your bed. Start to steward the things that are going to add up. Steward the job that you hate. Because you're going to get hit with the best job or opportunity of your life and you're not going to be ready for it because you don't even know how to steward what you have right now. And I say that for anything in life. I think with sobriety, when it comes to that, steward each day that you have, that you're able to see with clear eyes. Steward each one of those, and they'll add up. So 2016 that happened. Walked away from the fashion industry completely, and I haven't turned back ever since. Again, I know that I have found my purpose, and it is incredibly fulfilling. But it also keeps me really, really sharp in my journey with sobriety, with maintaining this 190 pounds of weight loss, with maintaining, I would say, just showing up when I don't want to show up, because I still have those days. And I just say the more times you show up when you don't want to, that's going to build the discipline. And you build that discipline, and that's going to push you through the times that you just absolutely aren't feeling it.
Okay, let me hit you with this question.
Shoot.
You don't want to show up. Yeah. I don't want to show up. Yeah. Sometimes I don't show up, and I'll lay in bed.
Yep.
And I have friends of mine that they're in depression, and they really are in that position. They're at that point where they don't think that they can get out.
Sure.
So what do you do for yourself in those times, or what have you done in those times where it's like, I just don't want to get out of bed. I don't want to show up. I don't want to do any of this. Sure. What do you lean on?
Well, let me fire back a question to you, and then I'll go off of that. Is that you didn't want to wake up, or you didn't really want to show up? Let's just say to this, okay? You showed up, right? You pushed yourself that time, one time, and you showed up. How are you feeling the next day after you've done this interview today because you showed up when you didn't want to? If, let's say, this interview has gone as well as I believe that it has, how do you feel the next day?
Obviously, I feel good.
There you are. Yeah. And that's the answer to your question. Start to build a pleasure to how good it feels. How good it feels to push through on those days that you don't want to show up, and you show up and you get incredible things done. I believe those are the days that matter the most. It's not about showing up to the gym when I feel like it. Sure, add that. It's not about getting up and waking up because I feel inspired for the projects coming up. Sure, that's great, but those aren't going to last. I say this all the time, but motivation and inspiration is like this, right? Find that middle balance, and the middle balance is going to be the discipline that you need. And that discipline is going to become a reflex, man. You're going to have days that you don't want to show up there, but you're going to show up because the discipline is in you and saying, man, I know there's some good stuff on the other side. And then build a disdain for how poorly it feels when you commit and you underdeliver. Build a real disdain for that. Build a disdain for binging one night and the next day. How do you feel the next day? Blurred. Your problems are still there. Build that disdain, and I call it the pain and pleasure method. So that's one huge thing. The other thing is when I start to feel like, man, I'm down, I'm drained, I reach out to my support system. You don't need 50 people on the hands and feet to have that support system. But build a handful that identify with you, that can understand you, and that you can pour into their lives and they can pour into yours. And that is incredible. That happened for me, Last year, September, my dad passed, 8 weeks later was dead. Out of nowhere. That could have easily spiraled me into, whether it's overeating, addiction, whatever. For me, the minute that I realized emotional eating was coming back, I reached out to my support system immediately. But I also built back and started to feel that pain and pleasure mentality of, how good it feels to make those optimal decisions. So, sorry I went on a rant, but I hope that answers a little bit of what you're asking.
That second part that you said was one of the things, and if you didn't bring it up, I was going to bring it up, was about the support system, because I'm super big on building communities around us, and multiple communities if need be, especially if we travel. If we're all over the place, it's important to have these little pockets of community / support systems. And a lot of times people try and do this alone, and it's just not realistic. We can never be successful at this whole sobriety thing, whether it's drugs and alcohol or food or sex or whatever. We need to have support systems around us. And the sad thing is that it's easy for you and I to say this, Noah. Like it is so easy for us to stand up here and talk about having a support system and having a community of people around you that can build you up and that can pour into you. But man, I know that there's, hundreds of people, thousands of people that are going to hear this and think, it's not that easy. For me, it's not that easy. I don't know what to do. In last week's episode, I did an episode solo just with myself on self-esteem and how that is such a impactful thing when it comes to sobriety. Like the health of your self-esteem, the condition of your self-esteem is going to directly impact the level of greatness in your sobriety and your recovery. And one of the things that I talk in there is about building community and building sober support systems and allowing people in our lives that actually care about us, not like a surface level, hey, you want to go golf, and then you go golf and then you don't hear from them from 2 weeks. Somebody that you can talk to on a deep, intimate level, and not your girlfriend or not your spouse. Somebody of the same sex that you can talk to, that you can trust, that you can, and starting off with just one person, because I know it's, like I said, it's easy for us to sit up here and say, like, you got to build this support system, but that makes it sound like you need 10 or 15, 20 people.
Sure.
And you don't.
Yeah.
Like one person is a good place to start. And as addicts, I think it's very easy for us to say, I can just figure this out on my own.
Sure.
I'm gonna listen to some meditation music in my headphones. I'm gonna watch a YouTube video. I'm gonna watch Noah, and I'm gonna watch his transformation on Instagram, and that is gonna inspire me to get my butt into the gym and lose the weight that I need to lose, or to stop the pills that I need to stop. And it very well could help.
Yeah.
It will help, but that's not the answer.
Yeah.
Like, it's part of, but there's so much more to it. And that community aspect and having people around you. I tell people all the time, you need to surround yourself with people that have the same problems as you. And I say problems lightly because, they're problems now, but they're not gonna, there's a silver lining in all this. But they also have the same end goals in mind. When people come into our center, they're addicted to drugs. They're addicted to alcohol. They're addicted to food. But they're surrounded with people that are addicted to drugs, alcohol, and food that know I'm addicted to drugs, alcohol, and food, and this is how I'm going to get to the other side of this. And they're with each other, and they're building community with each other, not doing it sitting at home by themselves, so...
Yeah, and I mean, you said it. I mean, I think, yes, when I speak and I share my story, or, we're talking about this, and, it's a story of redemption and all of that, and that's great. But I also understand people can be listening to this and saying, like, it's easy for them to say. And here's what I say. I say, don't just listen to the good of what this was. Listen to how torrential and awful and an absolute mess that I once was. Listen to that, and then look at what's happened up until this point, because I think that being able to identify with other individuals is huge. And you said it, having those people that are in your corner of support that have been there. I say, don't just surround yourself with addicts. Don't just surround yourself with people that have struggled. Surround yourself with people that know and have been through it. Because they're going to identify much better than than your mother or your father or your sister or your brother will. Not to say that other support system isn't important, because it is. But you've got to have people that have walked those shoes. I think that's one thing. I think when it comes to applicable ways to address addiction, one is you got to identify what exactly it is that you're running from. Identify that. Have you identified that? The second thing is identify an action list of what you want to accomplish, and take it one step at a time. Take it one piece of baggage at a time. You don't need to be looking at a year of sobriety. You need to be looking at what day 2 looks like. And so take it one day at a time. The third thing is, yes, get that pain and pleasure mentality deep rooted in the depths of your soul, of how good it feels to make optimal decisions for your life. I believe that those are 3 really applicable ways. And they're not the same, or that's not the end all be all. But I know those are applicable ways that I have utilized, and they have held me up. And then the fourth one is find your purpose and find your passion that is going to drive you every single day to be better. because complacency is a killer of most dreams. And yeah, so.
Yeah. What is it that, okay, so now, I mean, you see 50 clients internationally, 50 within the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
What is it now that keeps you going? What keeps you motivated?
Yeah. I mean, I think the clients for sure, being able to do this because, I mean, man, I'm watching lives change. And yes, nutrition is my vehicle, but we're digging deep, man. In you're not 300 pounds overweight just because. Like there's a deeper rooted issue or many. And we've got to take those out one bag at a time. And I love working in the trenches with that because I believe that is what leads to their weight loss. And that is what leads to, more importantly, lifestyle change that is able to be sustained. Most clients that come to me, or any client, that comes to me that focuses on just scale numbers or how they're going to look on the beach, they don't last. But when they realize, oh my God, I have got to dig deep in the depths to understand what has gotten me in the place I am and how to get out of that. I do that with weight loss, but see, that's the same thing for addiction. I believe it's, a lot of the principles that I use for weight loss are the exact same things for addiction. And for again, ultimately lifestyle change, so that keeps me driven, that keeps me accountable. I cannot talk out of one side of my mouth and be over here doing something else. How am I talking ex-client over here out of suicide if I'm on the other side and I'm getting high? No, I can't. My conscience so that keeps me accountable. I think my faith in God. I have always had faith, but for many years it was gone. So I'm able to sharpen that through different sermons and different things that keep me interested and keep me sharp. So faith in God has really helped me with that, without a doubt. And understanding the grace that He's had in my life up until this point. If I relapse, if I go back to the life I once did, I will not make it through. I'm confident in that. And then the last part of it is remembering how hard and how much work it has taken to get here today. It takes one moment to lose trust. One moment of selfishness. But man, it takes years to rebuild that trust. You know it. It takes absolute years, and that's something that really keeps me accountable, I think back about, yes, my past, and I do reshare my past and my story all the time, social media. That keeps me sober, man, and again, the farther away I get from the bottle, the farther away I get from those releases, I believe that the closer I get to continuing to lead lifestyle change and then impact other lives. And so
I like to use this term, and I don't know if I came up with it. I don't think so. I think actually Ben did, but Ben, I'm taking it from you. Again, recovery capital. And you can definitely use that within, drugs and alcohol and food. And basically what it means is that the longer we go through this process, and the longer, like you said, the longer that I stay away from the bottle, and the longer I stay away from the pills and the, cupcakes or whatever, we start building this recovery capital, and I don't care what anybody says. Like, the longer that we maintain sobriety in whatever it is, the more likely you are to maintain that sobriety for long term, if not forever. Mm-hmm. I mean, to me, it just doesn't make sense. And some people will say, well, you only have today. And I get that. I understand. But I got, whatever 8.5 years times 352, I got all those days too. Mm-hmm. And each one of those days I have gained something. I've gained a house, I've gained a wife, I've gained 2, soon to be 3 children. Mm-hmm. I've gained, friends and relationships and all of the above. So don't tell me that I have just today. I have a lot of days, mm-hmm. and I don't want to piss those days away, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so the longer that we go into this process, and for those of you listening, when you're scraping together and you get 3 days, it's going to be tough. You're going to think, I got 3 days, and I'm sitting here listening to guys that got 5.5, 8.5 years. I'm never going to get there. Well, unfortunately, with that attitude, the likelihood is you won't. But you can change that attitude, and you have to change that attitude. And, that's obviously, we can go down that trail. But point being is that you can get there. And I'll be honest with you, I can't even believe how fast this time has gone. When I was out ripping, drinking, and drugging, it was like the days just drug on and on and on. And now here I am sober, and it's like I don't know where the heck the time goes, and it's really an amazing thing. So tell me now, as far as the relationships that you destroyed, where are they now?
I mean, every one of them has been rebuilt. I mean, this is redemption, not because of my own work, but because of me. I mean, really just constantly heeding and leaning on that support. Those people that never gave up on me, and so, I mean, we have beautiful relationships, and it's relationships that I don't want to throw away now, I mean, being able to drive down the road for a 11-hour road trip and see my sister and her husband sleeping in the passenger seat, being able to do that with full trust, with them sleeping, not worried if I'm going to run off the road or not. Bro, that is sobering, man. Being 6 months sober and much less be invited to my sister's wedding. That is sobering, my man. You can't fake this, man. And I tell anybody out there right now who is in a place that is hopeless or has a loved one that is in a place that is hopeless, never give up on them. Because it is your compassion that could be the reason why they stay alive. I'll end it there, man.
Yeah. Well, man, I'll tell you what. This has been an absolute awesome time. And, I mean, unfortunately, you're only here, a couple days, and then you're going to all over the world, which is awesome. And, again, fruits of sobriety, But this time that we've gotten to spend together has been really amazing. I'm super grateful that you've taken time out to come here, and even tomorrow with what you're going to do and meet with our clients and just be a beacon of hope for them and just speak to them and pour into them and tell them your story and stuff. I know they're going to get a ton out of it. There's going to be a lot that comes from this. Obviously, this isn't going to be the last time that we meet. I mean, there's this whole addiction, community, and I say community only because I can't think of another word to use right now, but people struggle with addiction they're scared to say anything. They're scared to come forward. They're scared to put themselves out there. And that's who we need to reach. And the people that just do not know where to turn, what to do, that's who we're trying to reach. And, we got to continue doing this stuff, continue doing, putting out this content, and, we're going to impact many lives, man. And I know the amount of lives that you've already impacted thus far. I mean, and look, this is a social media world now. I mean, here's a good time. Where can people find you?
Yeah, sure. I'm at Transformational Truth, and that's on Instagram. I don't really dabble in all the YouTube and, everything else right now, but I mean, for me, it's one platform, and I share a lot there. And then nutritionmanagement.com. It has a lot of depth, deep stories and content on there that is going up almost every day. And so
if somebody wants to contact you, they can hit you up on Instagram, which I know because I just one day, I found you from Mark Bell's podcast, and which is an amazing podcast. Shout out to Mark Bell. He was on this podcast. Super, super nice guy. Great thing that he's doing with the lifting and the weights and stuff. But you answered me, And so I'm sitting there on my Instagram account with 400 followers, and I send somebody a message that has 200,000 followers, and I'm like, well, this is a shot in the dark, but what the hell? And you answered. You know what I mean? And that in and of itself shows, like, you're doing it, dude. And you're impacting a lot of people's lives. And I can't be, like I said, I can't be more grateful to have you here. So, do you have anything else you want to say?
Man, I'm just grateful for this opportunity, and I'll say this to you on camera, and I say it to you in person outside of it, but continue to create that impact that you are. You don't need social media to do it. That's the beautiful thing, right? You've got Rock Recovery Center here, Palm Beach, Florida, and you're living with purpose, and you're paying it forward, man. 8.5, almost 9 years sober, you know how good it feels, and you know the freedoms that have been unlocked because of it. And so, man, so much respect to you and the whole team, here, and I'm looking forward to doing more. And that's it.
Awesome, dude.
All right,
that is it for this episode of Real Recovery Talk. Don't forget to go to realrecoverytalk.com. At the bottom of that page, that like computer screen of yours, in the bottom corner, there's going to be a little tab there that says live chat. Click that and you can send me or Ben a direct message, and we will answer you promptly. I promise you, because those things come to our phone immediately. And there's actually a little timer there that tells us how long you have been waiting for our response. So, go there. Do that, realrecoverytalk.com. And that is it for this week. We will see y'all later.